IVM.
Episode 100. Over the last 100 weeks, I can't believe it's 100 weeks, I've spoken to a vast variety of people across spaces, genres, people have genres too, and points of view. It's been one of the most enriching processes to have conversations with and learn from so many of these really interesting people. And so for the 100th episode, I decided to take a spin at something I've been meaning to do for a while now. Let me explain. I've noticed that, when popular people are interviewed, they in most cases ask the same stuff, or stuff around the same stuff. And I thought, if I was getting to have a half an hour chat with someone like Rana Daggubati, who's my guest for the 100th episode, how do I make this interesting for him? And I kind of think about what I'd want to talk to him about if I had half an hour with him, and kind of pick his brain on a few things that I've always wanted to ask him, because I have had a sporadic interaction with him, and I thought his perspective on a few things was very, very intriguing. So that's what's ahead on this week's episode of Advertising is Dead. It's a non-regular chat with Rana Daggubati. And before you head into this episode, I have a few announcements. I'm taking a break. After 100 weeks of doing this show, I'm taking 4 weeks off. I'm taking a month off. But while I'm away, we're going to be rebroadcasting some of the older episodes, which I feel are more relevant now than ever. And honestly, just deserve a second listen, if not a third. Plus, I'm also launching a newsletter. I've been spamming this out on social media for a while, trying to figure out if people actually want to listen to a newsletter. And yes, I'm launching one. It's called Unschooled. And you need to log into varunduggi.com, that's varunduggi.com, to subscribe to it. And before I start blabbering more, on to my chat with Rana Daggubati. I'm Varun Duggirala, the co-founder and content chief of The Glitch, and this is Advertising is Dead.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another awesome, amazing, superb week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you're not following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I also just wanted to ask everybody if they could go to the website, ivmpodcast.com/survey, and fill out a quick survey for us. It would be much appreciated. What a week we had this week. We had so much crossover, so many great guests. I don't even know where to start. Okay, I do know where to start. Let's start with Uncle Please Sit. Uncle Please Sit, Joel and Tushar had Hamsini Hariharan. Hamsini hosts a show called States of Anarchy with their network. She is a China expert, and they discussed the India-China relationship. Really fascinating conversation. Cyrus had 2 conversations this week instead of our normal Thursday Cock and Bull. Great conversations, both of them. We'll be back with our regular Cock and Bull next week. But this week, you could definitely check out the conversation he had with Varun Grover. Really fascinating stuff. And Nikhil Taneja, who was the founder of Yuva and the creative director for the India Film Project Festival, which is going on this weekend. He was on the show as well. Cyrus was also on Advertising is Dead this weekend with Varun Duggirala. Cyrus and Varun discussed Cyrus's intent on randomness. Ranveer Brar guested on Gauri Devi Dayal show. This rounds on me. Another amazing conversation over there. Priyanka Khimani, one of the best IP lawyers in this country, was on Storytellers and Storysellers for a fascinating conversation. Definitely do check that out. And finally, I wanted to congratulate Zarina Poonawalla for her 100th episode. She had Ashish Vidyarthi as a guest on that. If you have not been listening to the Empowering series, please do. It's one of the great shows out there. And with that, let's get you back to your show.
Hi, Rana. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Varun. Thank you so much.
Thanks for taking the time. And I've been meaning to reach out in one way or the other to have a chat with you for quite some time now. And my whole point was because I've always found your perspective on cinema and everything that's happening around it and where things are really going has always been very interesting. Because you've always had a very, I wouldn't say unique, but I would actually have a very different perspective, which I've always really liked. But I wanted to kind of start off with the beginning. If you kind of go back to what has cinema been for you, let's say from the beginning of movies and that entire thing, I'm not just calling it cinema. How has that entire thing been from you from, let's say, day one? When was day one? I'm guessing long time ago. But how is that?
Day one to me was pretty much when I was kind of born, I think. See, I remember the house I grew up in used to have a editing room in the basement. So, and that time it was all manual. So it was Steambacks that used to edit stuff. So I think of 5th or 6th grade, I knew how to operate a Steamback. And so to me, it was much more closer than, in terms of impact, right, than anybody else.
So people are learning building blocks and you were learning how to use a Steamback machine in that sense.
Yeah, well, now what else to do? No, it's in your house, that's what you do. And the house that I lived in also, we used to live in the top floor, and the rest of the house they used to shoot. So it used to be a shooting house. So I ate breakfast in the morning on set most times and went to school. Right. So the vibe becomes very different in terms of how you view it. So I think that's day one. So I mean, right from when I can remember, this is what it was. And then obviously you watch a lot of films because your family loves you to do it, and it's also treated important. Right.
And also what is interesting is that a lot of people, while they've seen you as an actor, you've actually done a lot of work behind the camera in terms of just like, I was reading about how you started off a VFX studio way back. You've always had, and you have an innate love for animation, which I'm guessing a lot of people wouldn't know as much as which I was discovering.
Well, so I think, like I said, no, I mean, obviously it started off for me very young in terms of the exposure towards entertainment in that matter of fact, whether it was movies, whether it was animation or theme parks or anything like that. And you always try to add a missing block. And to me, I grew up on films like Star Wars, and that's pretty much how I operate.
You're telling me my daughter's name is Leia, so I totally relate to that. So
there you go. So now when you watch films like that, and then you see your family is also in the movie business, now you're trying to figure out how to correlate this and make our own stories that are as big and as spectacular.
Yeah.
So I think visual effects was the first step towards all of it, and that was like a missing piece at that point. I think from when I started to now, I think it's been such a big growth in terms of visual effects, and oddly, I ended up being in a film like Bahubali, which actually was able to showcase all of that. So I think that's where it started, and then one progressed into another. And for me, it didn't matter what job I was doing as much as I was in the movies. So I think so one job to another, you don't know when it shifted, and it keeps going back and forth even now.
Post-production and if you look at post-production, animation, VFX, they were all, while there was always a focus on editing, I feel a lot of the other aspects, because it always seemed like something that would only involve, let's say, sci-fi or something else, never got as much focus as I would say in recent times. And kind of looking ahead, because the amount of focus I'm at least seeing in that area, especially after a movie like Bahubali, and people are seeing what you can actually do with it, and not to just kind of use it for random things, but to use it almost as a plot device, as a storytelling tool, right? There's so much opportunity there.
I think one is now we're also in a time where you want to see big spectacle, right? I mean, you have so many other means of content that you have, whether it's OTT, whether it's on your phone in some format. Now, for cinema to get for you to enjoy an experience, you go to the movie theater not just to watch a film anymore. You just want to, whenever that is, whenever you go back to the movie theater, that is, you'll want to see a spectacle. You'll want to see something that's much larger than what you see every day. And I think visual effects will be probably the biggest tool for all storytellers. And India, I think, first we're like a whole bowl of content, right? I'm saying we have stories right from the beginning of time. It's a 5,000-year-old civilization, and all we have is storytelling, and all of it which lends itself to big spectacle-based movies and that kind of storytelling. So I think visual effects will start becoming a very, very probably the backbone of storytelling in many ways.
The point you just made, and I remember when we had that pre-call yesterday, I was mentioning to you that the one time that we did meet before this was, and you had made this interesting connection of saying, when someone says, why doesn't India have as much, doesn't have a Marvel or a DC? And your point was, we have so much source material, we don't have to write that, which is our entire mythology, all the stories there. And now we actually have the ability and the tools to be able to scale that up. I found that comparison, it stuck with me since then. I think it's over a year now, but that comparison stuck with me because it just made total sense. And I don't know why nobody had ever connected it that way.
Well, I think, again, coming back to where stories are viewed as, I got to know about India's religion or gods through Amar Chitrakatha. And that was my understanding. Now, I also read other comic books at that point. So these were as real or as unreal as how I believed it. Right? Now, if you just take them as stories and you just take understanding from them, and it's morals that are told, over time they become myth and God. But I'm saying, for deep down, I'm saying the bare root of it comes from a very solid storytelling pattern, which is why it's stuck so beautifully for so long.
And also, I think what it does is there's a lot of depth in each of those stories, right? I think what we sometimes forget is we have so many stories in India from our mythology, from like when you mention Amar Chitra Katha, I can think of all the stories that I read, and we used to have those tons of them around. And they're such deep stories and have so many different areas you can really explore in it. While we've explored some over time, but I think there's so much there that we can do so much with.
So I think this is pretty much that time. I think post Bahubali, you've seen a bunch of other films that have used big visual effects, made big action films, different languages all over the country, and films that are regionally being made have become national properties, national films. And I think visual effects gives way to all that. And when you go away from your regional storytelling pattern, you eventually create something that's national. And anything in terms of an epic story tale will connect India all together. And I think that's where we're headed. I'm sure you'll see in the next coming years a lot more of Indian stories being told at a global scale.
What I also wanted to ask you was that when you look at stories and how we build them, right? Especially, I mean, for all platforms, especially with how people are consuming stuff right now, like you were saying. What do you think the process needs to be, especially for today's audience, to kind of build stories? I mean, how do you build stories for today's audience?
See, today, I mean, storytelling or filmmaking in that format has become so democratic. Now I'm saying, what story do you want to tell first? I think first choosing that becomes very important. Earlier, the access or exposure to stories was very little, right? You got to see only limited number of foreign films. You got to read limited number of books, or there was only a few comics being published. Now, pretty much you can read everything that's across the world at your fingertips. So one is this exposure to content is extremely high, which means your audience or your consumer is also looking at the same. Right? So you got to be extremely unique. But the point being, today you can create something regionally or nationally that can take a global audience very fast. And we've seen international properties do that in India, and we've seen one or two Indian properties do that at earlier times. I think now is a time where I think we just have to focus in that direction. First, say, this is the story I want to tell. This is what I understand. And I think it's very important to find your voice first. And from the voice, I think you'll find the stories you have to tell.
You know, what do you think, I mean, especially how you're speaking about right now, what do you think was the process which worked for Bahubali as compared to anybody else who tried to do, let's say, similar stories in the past? I mean, because you were part of that experience end to end. What do you think what are the pieces that came together, especially to tell what was innately not just an Indian story, but something that, like, because I grew up in Kakinada on the coast of Andhra, right? So I related to it on a different level because a lot of the nuances were very, I mean, it was for I mean, a Telugu audience would get it, but you also then got wider. So to get all of that together, what do you think were those pieces?
See, first, it's a very classic Indian tale, right? Now, it's a classic Indian tale with an emotion that every single one will understand. Whether it's a story of a mother, a brother, a story of power, deceit, loyalty. Now, these are emotions that you understand at every level. Now, what Bahubali did was put it in a proportion that was epic, which is what a Ramayana or a Mahabharata are to us, right, in that sense. Now that's really what caught India together. Now, everyone, whether we're from Andhra or Telangana or anywhere in India, right? Now, everybody has different understandings of culture. But the minute it becomes an epic, it becomes, the onus becomes everybody's. So, you see, Ram for us will speak in Telugu only. Like that, no?
What's also, I think was, I think of that movie and I then think of even Ghazi Attack, right? And the fact that the whole multilingual movie scenario was another thing which I also found interesting, because it kind of, there's a formula which you seem to have an insight into, which is the fact that can you make a movie work across languages by actually shooting it in across language, which people have tried in the past, but there was something to the process which made it more seamless. What would you have to say about that?
See, the reason why I got to these multiple languages, both the films, whether it's for Ghazi Attack or whether we did that for Bahubali, was because there were stories outside the Telugu domain. Say for two different scenarios, right? One's small, one's large.
Yeah.
Now, take for Ghazi, for example. If you go to when the year it was made, if I went to a producer saying, he wanted to do a submarine-based war film in Telugu. It made no sense to them, right? And there was no action really. I was not fighting. I wasn't dancing. There was no music in that sense.
Yeah.
And Taapsee plays such a little role in it. It's not of any beat. But then, as a national audience, you knew there's a whole larger audience that will understand that if you go to larger metros. And so Hindi became a natural choice like that.
Yeah.
And so did Bahubali. Now, obviously, it was made at a scale that was much bigger than any Telugu language would be made.
Yeah.
And the intention was always to make it in two languages. So it was shot in Telugu and Tamil.
Yeah.
And obviously, the Hindi was dubbed.
And sorry.
So I think one is first being inclined to doing it that way. I think that's its first intention that first comes in play. And second, it's a process that's a little bit more tedious than your regular job. Because you got to get the same thing in multiple takes and multiple times. You got to get it in multiple languages too. So it gets tedious, but if you really want to connect across the board, I think that just changes the whole thing.
Doesn't that become a process that's extremely tough for an actor to kind of do? Because you're literally doing the same thing across language, but also would you say some nuances change when you do those? Or
see, like I just shot a film. I shot a film in 3 languages. It's a film is called Hathi Mere Saathi in Hindi.
This seems to be your thing now.
Yeah, so it's called Aranya in Telugu and it's called Kadan in Tamil. Now it's a film that I shot in 3 languages with a director who is Tamil. So Prabhu Solomon is the director of the film. Now it also has, so it's a story of a man in the jungle and elephants and all of those kind of things. So we had a different cast for Hindi and Tamil, with me and the elephants being the same, and a few other actors. Right? Now, because when you go to a tribal village in Tamil Nadu, it'll look different from Kaziranga or Assam.
True.
Right. So to get that detail, and if you want to actually get to all of these audiences at the same time, I think you got to localize it in some format.
Yeah. When you look at this whole, look at the entire entertainment space from a business perspective, right? I mean, how do you see that the space evolving? Especially, I mean, while on one end there is a short-term question on how theatrical screenings will happen, etc. But when you look at it from a wider lens, what do you see are great growth opportunities? Where do you see things kind of going, especially the way people are consuming stuff, like you said, off your phones and everything else?
See, one is obviously the want for content has increased dramatically from large movie theaters, going audiences to OTT to short content that's being consumed on the phone and to social media based apps. Right now, there are few content creators that I think can work across the board, can go in every space. Obviously, the large volume growth will be on social media. That's what you're going to see at a much larger level because it's consumed at a very daily level. It's on your phone and you're on it most of the time. So, and that I think it will just be the volume game. Cinema will obviously now there's a short-term understanding of where theaters will be. There'll be some uncertainty. But I think once the time is back and things are back to normal, and whenever that normal is, right, now we've all adapted to things like work from home at a very convenient level. Now that lifestyle is going to see a big, you'll see a big splurge in whether it's restaurants or whether it's movie theaters. I mean, you'll want to start going out if you start working at home, right? And you consistently keep seeing many IT large companies that are going work from home till 2002, 2003, 2023 and all of those kind of things, right? Now, I think that when you see that change, I think that you'll start seeing a lot more. The next is OTT. I mean, we're just about in the beginning of what we're seeing. I think you see a lot of Hindi content now, but then eventually you'll see a lot more regional vernacular, and you'll actually be able to see a lot of cross-border language shows you'll see a lot of Hindi Telugu based shows, shows that of Telugu people living in Bombay, shows of Tamil people living in Bombay, or Bombay Hindi people living the other place, right? I think that'll kind of connect India in a much cinematically or storytelling wise as a country.
Yeah.
And that'll be the first time we'll actually see large global numbers and what the entire population in the headspace can do. Right.
Actually, you make an interesting point, right? Because I mean, the fact that there's so many shows which are, let's say, in Spanish or any of the other global languages across the world now, there's no reason why we need to still. I think sometimes we have an innate problem ourselves. We've segmented ourselves by language and industries, but I think now it's actually a seamless thing. Where when I look at young creators, they don't really care. They're just doing it organically, however it works.
Exactly right. I'm saying, and even as a consumer, we've changed. No, I mean, today you don't have a problem watching any language.
Yeah.
And I mean, I watch a lot of foreign stuff. I watch a lot of regional stuff. See, and I think somewhere growing up in Hyderabad, because I was born in Chennai, so I speak Tamil. I watch a lot of Tamil films, and then I grew up in Hyderabad, so you continue watching Telugu and a little bit of Hindi.
Yeah.
And because you speak English anyways, so you watch English films, right? So I think kind of growing up here, you just kept watching all of those, and I always had the exposure to more and more regional cinema.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's it's just going to get bigger and bigger now. I think as long as you have a great voice and a great story to tell, where you can reach with that is pretty limitless.
Yeah, you've also done a fair bit of, I mean, with Anthill Ventures, you had a fair bit of focus in terms of specific areas to kind of invest in, right? At least from that focus area, which are the areas which you would say, especially from this industry and in general, that you're really focusing on, which you see a lot of potential in for the future?
See the initial working with Anthill was to enable tech in the entertainment business. If you see the rest of the world, there's all of the IT and the entertainment have merged in that sense. There's a lot of Silicon Valley runs a lot of tech in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Right. But we don't have that in India. There's a very little convergence that never happened. I mean, there's a big tech arm and there's a big entertainment arm, but both completely go. There's no connect really at all.
Yeah.
Right. So that was really the connect we were trying to make and find companies in that space.
Yeah.
So that whether it's in form of OTT building, whether it's the form of rights management through blockchain. So all of those tech that is right for the entertainment business. That's how it really started with. And what it led out into is consumer brands and where the brands and content kind of go together. And taking from your the first line that I've seen, advertising is dead, right? From your piece. Now today, there's a whole storytelling angle to things. The way the consumer has completely changed. People want sustainable stuff. People want stuff that's right. People want to wear their personality in that sense, right? Very literally.
Yeah.
And see, it's a generation which is completely different. That's actually entering the buyer that's different.
Yeah.
So I think from tech to urban lifestyle, I think that's where the direction has been. So I think these are the two verticals that we're capturing very, very definitively through Anthill.
If you had, if you had to pick a couple of specific instances that you think have really, trying to shape your mindset about how you look at the entire entertainment space, right? I mean, it could be you as an actor, you as, you as more from an entrepreneur standpoint. What would you say? Would there be a certain instance which you say would kind of played a strong part in that?
See, ultimately, it's creation of intellectual property or anything that can last forever. Right? It's a story that can last forever. That's what you're trying to back at the heart of all of this.
True.
Now, if there is a character that we can create, which is an animated character through a comic book, now the idea is, can we make that a feature film? If we make that a show, can that become a consumer brand? Can that go into a theme park? And I think today the idea of 360 is what the consumer needs. I think we're going slowly. We're moving away from the days where you're fine with just engaging with a content piece that you like once.
Yeah.
You want to connect with it more and more, which is why you see a large growth in merchandise sales.
Yeah.
And you see whether it's any of the large consumer brands, you see them either making celebrity-based relationships or celebrity-based brand itself. Whether I'm saying things like the Nike Air Jordan story, or I mean that's now all over, right?
Yeah.
So life has gone to a subscribed model. So you subscribe to a certain lifestyle, you subscribe things. And I'm also pretty much a firm believer of that, right? I think that's, you want your personality or your voice to be unique.
Yeah.
And I think now today, any unique voice will have a platform. And I think that's really what we want to do.
I like you said life has gone to a subscription model that actually in a way connects to, I think, and when I think about, I'm trying to tick boxes in my head, I'm like kind of ticks all the boxes of what all we end up doing as people.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean,
another piece which I actually wanted to kind of ask you was that, a lot of, the audience for my podcast generally are younger, right? I mean, they would be, let's say, finishing off college, would be starting off work, and while they'll end up learning a lot of stuff like school, college, etc., maybe at work, there are many things which they don't necessarily end up learning before they start actually maybe pursuing what they want to do, maybe start to continue to dream about what they actually want to do. If you had to give a couple of points of advice, saying, okay, these are things you should kind of keep in mind if you want a career in the entertainment space. These are things that are definites no matter what happens, especially looking at how things are going. What would those be?
See, first something, if you want to be in the entertainment space, one is earlier you had to be a storyteller to be in this, right? You had to have a creative eye. You had to be somebody who's inclined to art more than anything else.
Yeah.
But today, if you can be somebody from tech, you can be somebody from the business space. Doesn't matter where you are. It's an industry that's growing at an extremely fast pace.
Yeah.
And that requires as many talent pool people that can come into this place. See, the heart of it will always be storytelling, and to aid that, see, today visual effects has come as a full technology tool.
Yeah.
I think that's aided. That was the first step that kind of came in because the story had to be told better.
Yeah,
we have a lot more in the business side of it where we're now selling rights which are blockchain enabled. I mean, there's so much other tech that's, whether it's the projection system, whether it's the way we shoot things, everything's evolving very, very quickly. And I think whichever part, whether you're an engineer, whether it's, I think there's space for everyone now in the entertainment business as opposed to earlier. It's just, and I think it's such an early stage where you can find a niche and really find a product or a property that winner takes all kind of business. So I think that's really open here in the movie business.
And I was meaning to ask you this as well because I kind of touched upon it in the beginning as well. I've spoken to a bunch of people who, and that's been a consistent question, saying while everybody talks about shooting stuff, when will Indian animators kind of see their day? While I'm starting to see a little bit more glimpses of that front, but for me, like I was a late animation consumer, right? Initially, because I think we all heard they were called cartoons when we were growing up. So it's like when you grow up, you don't watch cartoons anymore. Was what we kind of thought till I discovered Pixar and kind of changed my mind over time. But I mean, do you see that mindset changing in terms of just focus?
I think that's going to change a lot very soon. See, because one is, and I think it's also especially because of the lockdown first, because one is you start realizing that's the only high quality job that you can do, where you don't have to get to a set and build stuff. That's first. And I think what's really a greenfield now will be animation for the teen, the adults, and I mean that's a space that's completely open in India, and we really have a vernacular understanding that's so different from everybody.
Yeah.
So I think one is it's funny that you asked, but I actually just finished an animation show that will be out probably in a month or so on one of the bigger OTTs. So the show is called Why Are You? So, so it's irreverent, it's pretty mad, and it's animated.
So I mean, that because I honestly felt the more and more I consume animated movies, which I never did, I actually started doing it a lot later. I realized there's so much potential to tell great stories with that, which sometimes a regular short one could never really connect with.
See, and the thing is, I think the good thing about India is once you have a bunch of shows, a bunch of large people doing it, you'll see a we catch up very fast. The scale of growth is extremely, extremely high. And I think it's pretty much around the corner. You'll see a lot of that popping up in the next, I won't even say next year or so, in the next 6 months, I think.
Yeah. I want to kind of, as we come towards the end of this, I want to ask you a couple of questions which are very random. I always like to finish up any chat I have with a set of really random questions.
Go for it.
What is the one thing that anybody would not ever learn in college or school about the entertainment business?
See, one is the change is extremely, extremely fast, right? And I don't see yet a school which is consistently up to date in terms of what's exactly happening in the film business and what's being taught.
Yeah.
So one is now if you see, like, if you look at all of India, right? If you see the entire entertainment business, the number of people who are from film schools and for the number who are out, there's two different things altogether, right? So it's a lot of self-taught, self-learned, and learning on the job type of system that it's built around, right? So one is what is a definite learning that I see a lot of people who at least are not from the space who come into the space is they assume it's a place that you don't have to train anymore for, right? You assume you're trained and you get here. Here you just have to learn every day. Otherwise, you have no clue what's happening next. So, so it's probably the most evolving business because, see, look at the business like this now. What do you think you can just do?
Yeah.
Right. And everything people have imagined about the future has actually happened very, very probably crystal clearly. It's the biggest tool for anyone's imagination, right? And pushing the limits is what's happening each time.
What's your go-to movie when you don't have anything else to watch? Something you can go back and watch again and again and never get tired of.
Well, Star Wars I watch pretty much again and again.
Yeah,
that's a film I watch a lot. I'm a big fan of The Judgment Day, Terminator. I actually watch a lot of Spielberg and Lucas films of the earlier time. Jurassic Park, and see there's so much classicness to them that everybody will like it at any point they watch it. Right. Huge fan of the Indiana Jones series, the earlier ones. So I think those are my films that I've watched over time.
You have literally named the movies which I go back to. You have literally named the exact bunch that I go back to. Do you listen to podcasts?
Little bit. I think I'm a visual guy. I need to keep seeing stuff.
I'm going to give you a recommendation because you said Spielberg and Lucas. There is this phenomenal podcast series called Blockbuster. The season 1 is the story of how Spielberg and Lucas invented the modern blockbuster genre. So because you mentioned these, all the stories you have spoken of are part of that entire season 1 was that. Season 2 is James Cameron. So if there is somewhere you had to start, this is Blockbusters where you should kind of start it off.
100%. That would be a great start. Thank you.
And just to kind of like wind things up, why do you think the entertainment business is never really going to end? Do you ever think that will happen? Think it will stop? Will machines take over and we as humans stop doing it?
Hard, yeah. See, because ultimately any machine needs some kind of data, right? Say in the how many ever years of man's evolution, entertainment has been around. Right?
Yeah.
Are you all not entertained? Has been the time from the earliest civilizations, right?
True.
And man requires it to consistently be more and more creative to be engaged. So one is, will AI do it? I don't think so, because we'll get bored of that very quickly. So man still has to consume it, man still has to make it, I think, till the end. But a lot of process in terms of how we do things, I think AI will take over a lot.
Thanks so much for doing this, Rana.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Lots of insights there, lots of points people can get. And thanks for taking the time to do this.
Thank you.
Entertainment is like food for the brain. It's a window to culture and a great way to understand the world around us. The internet has changed what it means to be an entertainer, creating new storytellers with millions of fans. It has spawned a new breed, the story sellers, those behind the scenes creating the business for this ecosystem. They work with brands, platforms and channels who are keen to capitalize on an audience hungrier than ever for more stories. I'm Vineet Kanabar, and I have a ringside view to how stories are told and sold. On my show, I bring you creators, artists, executives and marketers for a freewheeling conversation around the business of entertainment. Tune in to Storytellers and Storysellers for personal stories, analysis and criticism every Thursdays as I talk to the brightest minds telling or selling great stories today.
Sachin Tendulkar, Virat Kohli, Don Bradman, and now Cyrus Brocha. Okay, probably not in the right company. I mean, Don Bradman is Australian. But it's called Cyrus Says, a wonderful show about everything. Find the show on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts.